Hi there, I'm Jackie Williamson, and I'm talking to you today about learning to be optimistic. And you might wonder why that is something that I'm talking about. Well, if you follow me on social media, probably mostly LinkedIn and Facebook, you will see that I posted at the beginning of the month a calendar which is created by the organisation Action for Happiness. And this month it has the theme of optimism. So they're calling this month Optimistic October. And it got me thinking back to the time in my life when I had moved from my normal optimistic outlook to a pretty pessimistic one, which was the result of various things that had been going on in my life at that time. And I discovered at that time that it was possible to learn to be optimistic. And I knew that I wanted to change back to being optimistic again. So I did learn how to be optimistic. And so now I am back at that optimistic state. And I thought that it might help other people as well to know that it is possible. So, some of the benefits of optimism, first of all, before we get into how to learn how to be optimistic, generally, optimistic people have better health overall than pessimistic people. They tend to achieve more and they certainly enjoy life more, as you can imagine. So it is well worth learning to be optimistic. And there are some very simple steps that you can take in order to do that. Now, when I set about my journey of learning to be optimistic, I had heard about a book called Learned Optimism, which was by a scientist called Dr. Martin Seligman. And I decided to read it because I thought it would be helpful for me. And whilst it is incredibly helpful in terms of its findings, it is quite scientific in terms of going into the experiments that he carried out. So you might find it useful, but if you're not into scientific talk, scientific way of writing, you might prefer to look for some summaries of it. But one of the things that really struck me, and the very first recommendation I have for you in terms of learning to be optimistic, that came straight from that book, is being grateful. Practicing gratitude makes such a difference to your outlook on life. And those of you who follow me for any length of time will hear me banging on about it all the time because it made such a difference to my life, and it makes such a difference to my clients' lives as well when they start adopting an attitude of gratitude. Now, even my most pessimistic client who has a particularly negative outlook naturally, which is something that they've been working on, even they found that when they eventually started a gratitude practice after a lot of nudging by me, they did start to feel more optimistic. Now, the reason it works is that it simply is not possible to have a negative thought at the same time as you're feeling gratitude. So that's why it's a good practice to spend time each day in gratitude. Now, it can be hard at first when you haven't been used to that way of being. So, a great way to start is simply to get yourself a notebook and pick a time of day that you can stick to, which is often for people either the first thing in the morning or the last thing at night, when you simply write down 3 things that you're grateful for in that particular day. And as well as writing them down, you need to really feel the gratitude of them because that really helps to embed it into your system. And what I found and what my clients find is that it doesn't take very long of carrying out this exercise before you just start feeling gratitude generally when things happen. You find more and more things to be grateful about, and you just start to feel brighter, happier, and more optimistic generally. So, that is my number one recommendation. If you remember nothing else, and if you try nothing else, but you want to learn to be optimistic, then cultivate a gratitude practice. Now, the second recommendation for learning to be optimistic is to challenge your negative thoughts. Because obviously, if you're being pessimistic, you're going to be having negative thoughts, but challenge them when they arise. So, first of all, notice them. Notice when you're having a pessimistic outlook and a negative thought, but then challenge yourself on that thought. Now, This was taught to me actually in the context of a sales talk back when I was in law. And it was taught in terms of being optimistic about sales, because when you are selling or trying to sell to somebody, you can get a yes or a no answer. And it's easy to think when you get a pessimistic, when you've got a pessimistic outlook, it's easy to think that no means, just no. And not even just that, but that you are a bad person, or the person you're trying to sell to doesn't like you, you're not worthy. But actually, all that no might mean is just not now, not at this moment, not today. Doesn't mean it's a no forever. It certainly doesn't mean you're a bad person. So I'm using that as an example for when you get some kind of a negative reaction in yourself to something that you're experiencing. Just challenge it. So in that situation, if somebody says no to you, it might be because you've invited them out for a coffee and they say no. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. So if you start thinking, oh, I'm a bad person, they'll never want to have coffee with me, they clearly don't like me, I'm never going to get any friends, just challenge all of those thoughts and think, actually, is it just that they've said no because they're too busy? They don't have time today. Are you really a bad person? Of course you're not. Is it that you're never going to have any friends? No, of course not. It just means that that particular person didn't want to go for a coffee at that particular time of that particular day. So that's what I mean by challenging your negative thoughts. And then my third recommendation is to surround yourself with positive people, with other optimistic people. Because if you surround yourself with people who are pessimistic, that's just going to drag you down further, because you're all going to have that pessimistic outlook on life. But if you're surrounding yourself with people who have an optimistic outlook, people who are positive, then that tends to rub off, because like attracts like. So if you're, for example, the only pessimist in a crowd of optimists, it can be hard for you to maintain your pessimistic attitude. Those optimistic people will naturally lift you up. So those are my three main recommendations for learning to be optimistic. Obviously, as I said, Martin Seligman wrote a whole book about it, so there's a lot more in there. But I've just really tried to distill down the things that I've learned that work for me and that work with my clients to help you on your way to learning to become optimistic. But that, just as a final point, remember that it takes effort. Nothing worth having happens overnight. You do have to work at it. So, for example, with the gratitude practice, you may find it difficult at first, just like I did, but just keep going. It didn't take me very long. I'd say within a couple of weeks, then I really noticed the difference. Even though on day 1 and 2, I was really struggling to find things that I could feel grateful for, because that was how pessimistic I was back then. It's the same with challenging your negative thoughts. Just keep at it. If you've had a pessimistic outlook all your life, or for a good period of time, again, you're not going to change it overnight, but just keep working at it and know that you can improve, and you will learn to be optimistic if you are determined. So thank you as always for watching. I will try to be back on YouTube again next Tuesday. I can't say when it's going to be, or even if I'm going to manage it, because I am actually going to be away on holiday next week, but I will do my best. And as always, I will be posting about it in advance. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.